say that asancham mahabhavo. There's no doubt about that.
Yes.
But abhyasena kontai viragena cham.
Yeah. Practice. Practice.
Practice, practice, practice.
Okay, yeah, so we're reading from the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita entitled Jnana Yoga, text number 34. So let's recite the Sanskrit. Yeah. Chanchalam hi mana Kṛṣṇa.
Chanchalam hi mana Kṛṣṇa.
Pramati balavadradam.
Pramati balavadram.
Syaham nigraham manye.
Syaham nigraham manye.
Vayor eva suduskaram.
Vayor eva suduskaram.
Okay. Bob, would you like to read the English, please?
The mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Kṛṣṇa, and to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind.
Does that sound familiar to anyone?
That's 100% true.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah, restless. So we've experienced these things, and the mind is always active. Even when we go to sleep, right? The body is shut down. That's when we go to sleep, but the mind is still active in the form of dreams, right?
Yeah.
So dreams are going on, and often these dreams are as the mind is regurgitating, like previous experiences in this life, even in previous lives. Sometimes it may come out, and it combines all different things together. So sometimes things get very mixed up in dreams, like you might see maybe a cow flying in the sky or something. Obviously, in reality, we haven't seen a cow flying, but we have seen things that fly, and we have seen cows, so the mind can, combine different things together. So, but these are the workings of the mind, is always active. It's actually said we shouldn't take dreams very seriously, because it's, like I said, it's the mind just putting all different past experiences together. However, it's said that if the spiritual master appears in your dream, or Kṛṣṇa, or God, like that, so then that one, can be some kind of benefit we can derive from that. Maybe some lesson is there. Kṛṣṇa has arranged that. Some kind of truth may be there, but generally we don't take it seriously because the mind is just regurgitating so many things. And
even chanting as well, controlling that is hard. It's just like, it's like, how many lifetimes this mind is agitated, and then we're trying to control it, but it's hard.
Yeah. I mean, the soul has been in the material world for countless lifetimes.
No, that's right.
Called anardi karma phale, due to the result of our activities, our previous activities, without beginning. We cannot, means it does have a beginning, but we cannot trace out when it began, the soul's coming into the material world. And we're getting one body after another, depending on which is, why are we getting these one body after another? It's because of our karma, because of our activities in this life is causing us to get another body in the next life, and our desires. So according to our desires and activities, we get another body. So every life you have a different body, but the same mind. The mind is not changing. So say we've been in the material world for millions of births, but you have one mind. For this one mind, all those lifetimes, and millions of bodies, but gross physical bodies, but one mind. So everything we do in each life is stored up in that mind. All the desires, all the.
Can you imagine how much MB the mind is?
Yeah, massive storage. Massive storage
is massive.
Yeah, and it's all these experiences, the impressions are left. The impressions are left on the mind. So ideally what we want to do is change the impressions that are put on the mind. Instead of all materialistic impressions, you know, sex, drugs, rock and roll, eat, drink, and be merry, instead of all that being impressed on the mind, we want to have things that are in relationship with Kṛṣṇa, connected with Kṛṣṇa. Like, you know, you go to a Rath Yatra festival, the chariot festival, have that impressed on your mind, the beautiful big chariots, you know, the beautiful smiling face of Jagannath, like and we see in the Bhakti tree, Jagannath is there. Have that impressed in your mind. You know, devotees chanting, singing and dancing, have those impressions in your mind. You know, associating with devotees and the spiritual master like that. So going to the temple and seeing Radha and Gokulananda, so seeing Prabhupada's Murti, we want those things to be stored up in our mind. And by doing that, by changing what's stored up in your mind, that is going to mean that your next life is spiritual. Your next life, you have a spiritual body. Because according to whatever is in your mind at the time of death, that determines where you go in your next life. Like I'll give you an example, that it's said that if you attend a Rath Yatra festival, the chariot festival, then you're going to be liberated. You're going to be freed from the cycle of birth and death and go back to Godhead. So how does that work? How is it just by one day attending that festival for a few hours and then at the end of life you get liberated? So Prabhupada explained one time, he said that at the time of death, your mind flashes back over your whole life, everything you did. And so when the flashback is taking place, when you're in the process of dying, the mind will come to that slide, you could say, that slide of when you saw Jagannath on his chariot in Rath Yatra. And Kṛṣṇa arranges that all that flashback of different experiences stops on that one. It doesn't go past that. And then at that point you die. So the last thing in your mind when you're dying is that. So, and that qualifies you, that person, to get liberated, to go back to Godhead. So that's the mercy. That's the mercy that's available in Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Even a little bit of Kṛṣṇa consciousness or devotional service can save us from the greatest fear, which is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, is the fear that after death we're going to come back to the material world and enter into the lower species of life, you know, and keep on going in the cycle of birth and old age and disease and death. So any sane person should be afraid of that. You know, I don't want to keep, you know, reincarnating and going through all these painful conditions. You know, now everyone is, you know, afraid of, what are we afraid of now? All over the world, everyone is afraid of COVID, you know, well, not everyone, but the masses of people are afraid of.
You know, Ukraine afraid for something else.
Yeah, war. You know,
War.
afraid of war. You know, some country is going to attack us. And why are we afraid of war? Because obviously we might die by the
Fear
bomb.
of death.
Yeah, we're afraid of death. So we're afraid of, you know, old age. We're afraid of disease. We're afraid of death. So these are very fearful conditions. So we should have a strong desire to get free from all these problems. And that this real solution is Kṛṣṇa consciousness. The real solution to disease is not a vaccine. The real solution to death is not, you know, a powerful army, you know, with nuclear bombs and everything, you know, and military forces and everything like that. The real solution to old age is not, you know, medicines, special medicines and special diet and special exercises and everything. The real solution is Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Because these things must take place But by Krishna consciousness will stop the process. Where at the time of death, then you're going to go back to Godhead. You won't have to come back again, no more birth. So this is the real way to get free from all these problems. But it's all getting back to the mind. It's all hinging on the mind. The mind is that, as I've said many times, that's the foundation of any kind of yoga process. It doesn't matter. Karma yoga, jnana yoga, stanga yoga, bhakti yoga. But you have to control the mind, because depending on what's in your mind, what you're thinking about, what you're feeling, what you're desiring, that's going to determine whether you come back into another material body or whether you get liberated. So we've really got to work on the mind and put Kṛṣṇa in our mind as much as possible, and that will help us. And by putting Kṛṣṇa in our mind, then these materialistic tendencies, like being restless, restless means like always moving around, right? Just like it said that sometimes it said the monkey mind. Sometimes the mind is compared to a monkey. Just like a monkey jumps here and there, one branch to another. So the mind is very restless like that. It's always moving about here and there. Isn't it? Your mind, our minds, isn't it? Is jumping from one thought to the next, one desire to the next. Here it's not staying generally thinking about one thing. It's thinking about many things. Many things. So it's very restless and turbulent. So yeah, we're being like thrown around, just like if you have a turbulent, like the Ganges is very turbulent. The water is going and from different directions, spinning around and round. And like if people go in the Ganges, many times they drown because it's so turbulent. Then they get caught up in these like whirlpools
And then
pulled under.
that if you go to Haridwar,
Yeah.
the Har Ki Pauri, that
Yeah.
flow is so high, you have to be hold the chains. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you can't stand there.
Yeah, yeah. So the water like that is so powerful, it like throws you around all over the place and can pull you under. So the mind is like that too, very turbulent. It throws us all over the place. And due to just so many different desires, and we become mad, we become crazy, for material things. And that's caused by the mind. Oh, I want to become a millionaire. I want to get a lot of money. And then there's another one comes, I want to become very powerful and very famous. And then another one comes, I need that beautiful woman. I have to get that woman, somehow or other. I have to convince her, to stay with me or whatever like that. And then, then I have to go to this, I have to travel, that's important. I want to travel and see everywhere. And like that, the mind is always throwing us around.
In order to maintain the woman, you work like a donkey.
Yeah, and then I want this woman, and then I need to get a house for her and a car and everything.
Yeah.
Money to get these things, and then I'll get a mortgage, and then like that, and she wants this and that.
She'll take your credit card for shopping, and you keep paying for a credit card.
So like that, and that way we get so.
We lost him. Bob.
I'm here.
Yeah, but Abe, we lost Abe.
No, my wife was ringing. I don't know why. She knows. I think she knows I'm doing this. Anyway.
And now she's asking your credit card.
Giving trouble, see? Giving trouble. So and it's very strong, it's very strong. It's very hard to resist all these desires. Even great yogis, like we know in the story of one great yogi, Vishvamitra. But was very self-controlled. He had practiced the yoga process, control the breathing, control the mind, everything like that. And strictly avoiding, sex life, and controlled his tongue, controlled the genitals, everything. But when one beautiful woman was sent by Indra, one heavenly prostitute named Menaka was sent to make him fall down, he succumbed to her. The mind, it said that his eyes were closed in meditation. But what happened is she has a beautiful aroma coming from her body, and that's without perfume. That's just her body and
body smell, body odors.
Beautiful smell. here on the earth, we put perfume on the body because our body stinks. But, in the heavenly planets, it said that was invented by the French, right? It said the French invented perfume because they didn't take a bath. They were a bit lazy about.
We do have one person name is Laurent, if you remember that.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
He was French.
Yeah. So because they wouldn't take a bath very often, they thought, well, we'll cover over the bad smells by some nice perfume. But it's not like that in the heavenly planets. They have natural, beautiful aroma coming from the body. So that beautiful smell entered into his nose, and from the nose it goes into the mind. See, the mind is like the storage place for all these inputs from our senses. So we see something, goes through our eyes into the mind. You see the beautiful woman, and that goes into the mind. Or you smell some fragrance, that goes into the mind. Or you taste some food, that goes into the mind. So this is the reservoir. You could say that's the reservoir of all the different ideas for sense gratification is in the mind. So, and as soon as he smelt that beautiful smell, then his eyes opened, and then he saw, and she was like half dressed and walking in a very provocative way, just trying to seduce him. And then she spoke very sweet words like that, and that entered into his ears, and from his ears, those sweet words entered into his mind, and he heard the ankle bells. So that was one of the things that attracted him in the beginning. He heard that his eyes were closed, but he heard the ankle bells, which was a very sweet sound, and that entered from his ears into his mind. And then immediately the lusty desires in his mind, awakened. So that lust, which means like desire for sense gratification, is very strong, is very powerful. And we know also the story of Ajamil. That Ajamil, he was a nice young man, good family, good father, everything. And he was doing some running an errand for his father, but he happened to see the prostitute embracing a low-class man in the forest. And that seeing them having intimate relationship like that entered into his mind through his eyes, and then planted that seed in his mind. Oh, I can enjoy with this woman like that. So he became attached to her, and soon after, what happened? He left his wife, and then hooked up with this prostitute, and did many horrible activities to maintain her and please her. And of course, at the time of death, he was going to be dragged away by the servants of Yamaraj, the Lord of Death, and be punished for his sinful activities. But when he said the name of Narayan, which was the name of his young son, then that name of Narayan saved him, because then the servants of Narayan came and let him off the hook. But the principle is there that, the mind, we have to be very careful about the mind. So let's have a read. And then Arjuna, of course, sums it up saying that, I think to control the mind is more difficult to control the wind. It's like here in Wellington, this is known as windy Wellington where we are. It's probably one of the windiest places in New Zealand. And we're in a tent, so the tent on the windy day is like getting blown all over the place. We have to like hold on to the tent to stop it blowing away. And we've got so many ropes trying to, hold it to the ground, and it's being thrown around and everything. And even trying to, cook something, but even the flames of the fire, the gas, is getting blown around the wind, But then I think, well, if we do, can we think, well, we're going to stop this wind. This wind is a real nuisance. Let's stop it. But I mean, what are you going to do? It's like so powerful. How are you going to stop the wind? You can't see it, isn't it? You can't see it. How are you going to catch it? You can't even. I mean, you can catch something if you can see it, maybe, but you can't even see it. So it's like the mind. You can't see the mind. How are you going to catch it? How are you going to stop it? It's like very difficult. How are you going to stop the mind going, thinking about women and thinking about money and thinking about, destroying your enemies, or, so many things, envy, lust, greed, anger, all these we talk about emotions, right? Where do emotions come from? They come from the mind. You know, lust, greed, anger, envy, pride. You know, all these things are in the mind. And all these things cause us so much trouble and entangle us in the world by being lusty, by being greedy, by being angry. It keeps us entangled. So that's all to do with the mind. But the question is, how do we stop that? So this is what's discussed here. So let's have a read. Okay, Gulshan, do you want to have a start?
Yeah. The mind is so strong and obstinate that sometimes overcomes the intelligence, although the mind is supposed to be subservient to the intelligence. For a mind in the practical world who has to fight too many opposite elements, it is certainly very difficult to control the mind. Artificially, one may establish a mental equilibrium towards both friend and enemy, but ultimately no worldly man can do so. For this is more difficult than controlling the raging wind in the Vedic literature. Katha Upanishad 1.3.3-4, it is said, Atmanam, can't go for Ratinam Vidhi Sariram Ratham Evacha Buddhyam tu Saratin Vidhi Manaha Pagraham Ava Indriyani Haryan Ahur Visayam Tesu Gokaran Atmanindriya Mano Yokuttam Bhogatya Ahura Manishasa. The individual is passenger in the car of a material body, and intelligence is the driver. Mind is driving instrument, and the sense are the horses. The self is thus the enjoyer or sufferer in the association of the mind and senses. So it is understood by a great thinker. Intelligence is supposed to direct the mind, but the mind is so strong and obstinate that it often overcomes over one's own intelligence. As an acute infection may surpass the efficacy
Efficacy.
of medicine, such a strong mind is supposed to be controlled by a practice of yoga, but such practice is never practical for a worldly person like Arjuna. And what can we say of modern man? The smile used here is appropriate. One cannot capture the blowing wind, and it is even more difficult to capture the turbulent mind. The easiest way to control the mind, as suggested by Lord Chaitanya, is chanting Hare Krishna, the great mantra from deliverance in all humility. The method prescribed is Sa Vai Mana Krishna Paravarinde Yo. One must engage one's mind fully in Krishna, only then will there remain no other engagement to agitate the mind.
Mm, mm, mm.
So, no chance, only chant Hare Krishna. That's the only way to control.
Mm.
No matter you can sit in the forest or you can sit under the water or the mountain.
Mm.
How come the yogi they control the mind? Those who are in jungles and forests,
Mm.
they do meditation and that the pranayam and things like that. Do they control the mind?
That's their goal. That's their goal, to control the mind. And
Because
some are successful to some degree, and some less successful.
if you go to the Kumbh Mela, in the Kumbh Mela, a lot of that naked Babas, they come all that from the jungles and all that. You won't see them, only it comes in Kumbh Mela, the festival happened for Kumbh. And
Mm.
then go back after the having a bath in Ganges and they go back to their caves and all that.
Mm.
Though that's their target as to control the mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So the mind is always seeking some kind of engagement. There's no off switch, isn't it? You can't turn your mind off.
Oh.
Even like I said, even while sleeping, it doesn't go off.
Even after death?
Yeah.
And continue to the next body and no off.
Yeah. Even like I was talking about in the mind is lust and greed and anger, so forth. So one time, one king, I think it was Akbar, he asked his minister, Birbal, that when does the sex desire, the lust, when does it finish? And Birbal said it doesn't finish. Even in old age, there's still the sex desire is there. And the king was saying, no, it cannot be. Old man is having the sex desire. And then Birbal said, okay, I'll show you one day. Just wait and I'll show you. So in due course of time, one day Birbal said to the king, you come with me, I want to show you something. We want to visit one man's house that's dying. One man is dying, and you have to bring your daughter with you. So he had a very beautiful daughter, and he said that when you go into the house, you look at the dying man. You just look closely at the dying man when you go into the house, and you have your daughter with you when you go in the house. And so they entered the house, and the Akbar, the king, he's the biggest man in the kingdom, but he noticed that the dying man on his deathbed, he was only looking at his daughter. He didn't even see the king. He was just looking at the daughter. And then Akbar, he could tell that, he was attracted by the desire to enjoy. Still was there, the desire to enjoy. That attraction between the man and woman was still there, even at the time of death. So the mind is very, very powerful, very obstinate. It never stops. It's always going like that. So the process is not to try to stop the mind, but we want to give it a superior engagement. And we call that param drustva nivartate, by getting the higher taste. So let's look at that verse. Let's look at that verse, 2nd chapter, text number 59. 2nd chapter.
Sorry, what? Give me that number again.
59 of the 2nd chapter.
2nd 59, okay.
Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense object remains, but casing such engagement by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness.
Yeah. And if you look at the start of the purport, it says, unless one is transiently situated, it is not possible to cease from sense enjoyment. Mind is it's an addict. It's an addict to what? Sense gratification or sense enjoyment.
Female form.
Yeah, and other things too, like say addicted to money, addicted to power, addicted to, or, all kind of gratification, gratifying the tongue, eating, any kind of enjoyment of the senses. The mind wants to taste different things through the tongue and hear different things through the ears and see, like beautiful women and so many things, and the genitals, of course, to have sex like that. So that the mind is these things. But if you look further in the purport, this is very interesting. Prabhupada says, more than halfway through, but one who has tasted the beauty of the Supreme Lord Kṛṣṇa and the course of his advancement in Kṛṣṇa consciousness no longer has a taste for dead material things. So that's how it works. We need to connect with Kṛṣṇa, because Kṛṣṇa is so beautiful, like it's mentioned here. Tasted the beauty. tasted the beauty of the Supreme Lord Kṛṣṇa. Even like now, we're distributing prasadam, you know, more than 2,000 plates of food every day, and people are tasting the prasadam. They're enjoying it like anything. And many of them are coming up and telling us, if I have food like this, I don't need to eat meat anymore. That is how it works. It's just a higher taste. You know, if we get something that tastes better, we'll give up the lower tastes, you know, meat and so forth. If you see the beauty of Kṛṣṇa, you'll give up your attraction for the beauty of the opposite sex. But we have to connect with Kṛṣṇa. You know, your eyes have to connect with Kṛṣṇa, your tongue has to connect with Kṛṣṇa, your ears, you know, hearing the holy name. I mean, it's been amazing because there's so much chanting going on where we are that, you know, hours and hours every day the devotees are chanting, and people are hearing that sound of the Hare Krishna mantra is going in their ears. And the devotees are just chanting one tune, the original tune that Prabhupada chanted when he came from India. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So they're just chanting that one tune all day long, and people are hearing that. And what's the effect of that? We're all experiencing that these people, they're like some young kids up to old people, they're just walking around, and what are they doing?
Chanting.
They're chanting. And one of the guys, I sent him to the shop to get some butter and stuff, and there was a young guy who was just walking down the street, and he was chanting. He didn't get the mantra perfectly right, but he was going, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. And then the devotee, he hearing him chant, then the devotee chanted, Hare Krishna. And then the man turned around seeing him chant and said, I can't get this chanting out of my mind, he said. He said, I can't get it out of my head. I can't get it out of my head. So that this is the process. You know, you got to put something better in the mind, better than talking all rubbish, politics and everything like that. You know, we talk so much nonsense, rubbish, gossip and everything. So we want to instead put the vibration of Kṛṣṇa in our mind, and that will throw out everything else. Then you won't be interested in politics or talk about money, talk about politics, talk about so many things, what he did to him and she did to her and this and that. But we want to flood the mind with the sound of Krishna's names, the beautiful form of Kṛṣṇa, the taste of prasadam, the holy name, all these kind of things. And then automatically all that other rubbish will be pushed out, and then simply Kṛṣṇa will remain. And Kṛṣṇa is superior to all those other objects. So much more beautiful, so much more attractive. The food tastes better than other food, so that will replace. You know, then the mind won't want to eat KFC and Burger King anymore. Tasting the Kṛṣṇa's prasadam, then attracted to that. You know, you'll become attracted to the holy name and not to hearing, you know, some mundane music and so forth. So that's the way it works. We replace the lower habit with a higher habit, the lower taste with a higher taste. Does that make sense? Anyone want to say anything about that?
You bet.
And it's very difficult. Because if you're going to say, yeah, if you're going to say, you know, I'm going to, you know, we have to stop thinking about these things. We have to stop thinking about money and sex and so forth. But that's not going to happen. The mind is so rebellious. It's the word obstinate is here. Obstinate means, you know, like a little kid might be very obstinate. It's just determined. I want this, Daddy. Daddy, I want it. You know, and they don't give up that desire to have that thing. you know, or
The kids are best negotiator.
yeah. And then if you don't give it to them, what do? They do a tantrum, right?
Yeah.
You didn't give it to me. I want it. You did. Why you didn't give it to me? Why you didn't take me to the park or whatever? You know, the cinema. You told me you were going to take me to the movies. You haven't taken me. You know, so they do a tantrum and everything. So the mind is like that. It becomes so attached to something, and it's really determined to get it, and it won't give it up, and it won't listen, you know, to the intelligence, because Prabhupada's mentioning in the purport today that it's supposed to be subordinate to the intelligence. So that's another material element, you know. So we, of course, we have the 5 gross elements, the earth, water, fire, air, and space. And then you have the 3 subtle elements, mind, intelligence, and false ego. So intelligence is another material element, and intelligence is supposed to control the mind, but in the material world, what often happens is the mind is so strong that the mind dictates to the intelligence, you know, and that way we remain, you know, foolish and ignorant in the material world. But what is intelligence? So intelligence is the power to discriminate, you know, between right and wrong, you know, that we understand that you know, this is moral and that's immoral, this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. But when you can't distinguish between right and wrong, or good and bad, or moral and immoral like that, then it means the intelligence is not working properly. Or what's right, you thinking that it's wrong, you know, that means your intelligence is perverted. Like that we think it's right to kill animals, you know, that we have the right to kill animals. So that our intelligence is working in that way, that this is good, this is very good, you know, we need to, you know, eat the animals. They belong to us, you know, we have a right to kill them, and otherwise there'll be overpopulation, there'll be too many animals or whatever like that. So that means your intelligence is not working properly. We're the right thing, we're taking it as wrong, and the wrong thing, we're taking it as right. That means the intelligence is not working, you know. So it's supposed to, if the intelligence is working properly, we should be able to see things clearly in reality. But if everything gets muddled up, that means the intelligence is not working, and the mind takes control. So how does Krishna consciousness develop? Is actually because our spiritual intelligence has become awakened. And when the spiritual intelligence has become awakened and it becomes stronger, only then can we control the mind. So the question I have for you two is, how does our intelligence being awakened to Krishna consciousness, how does that spiritual intelligence develop?
Simple living, higher thinking.
Okay.
Association.
Yeah. Okay. Association. What are we getting from that association? And how is that association transforming our intelligence or strengthening our intelligence?
It's like when you associate with a devotee, what kind of conversation do you have? It's not for the, Ukraine and Russia. You'll
Yeah.
have it definitely Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita or that conversation, and then you'll train your mind to be in that direction. And mind is more powerful than intelligence.
Mm.
Mind can do anything. It's just the the thought.
Oh, I mean, for a materialistic person, yes, the mind is in control of the intelligence, but the in a In a normal situation where someone's Krishna conscious, in that case, the intelligence is more stronger than the mind. So it's not always that the mind is stronger than the intelligence, but if we get victimized by Maya, then the mind takes over. But actually, the way it's supposed to work is that the soul dictates to it controls the intelligence, and the intelligence controls the mind, and the mind controls the senses. But for a materialistic person, it's upside down. The
other way around.
mind, the mind controls the intelligence controls the soul, and like that. And that way, the soul's always kept in ignorance. So the question is, what is the process of making the intelligence more stronger so that it control the mind? What is it about associating with devotee that helps make our intelligence stronger?
Do you mean like listening, hearing, speaking,
Yeah, by
reading?
hearing. That's how our spiritual intelligence is awakened. And once it's awakened, to make it stronger is by hearing from the spiritual master, hearing from the devotees. That awakens our spiritual intelligence. I remember going from the point of being completely ignorant. I was eating meat and, completely atheistic. There's no God, there's no soul, there's no next life. To within days, I completely had a complete paradigm shift, completely different outlook on life. Now, what caused that transformation? My outlook on life, the way I viewed everything, the way I saw things, my goals and everything, was because I heard from a devotee. And he told me why it's wrong to kill animals, why it's wrong to eat animals. He explained to me that we're not the body, that we're the soul, and the soul's part of Kṛṣṇa. And just by hearing from him, that awakened my intelligence, the spiritual intelligence, and gave me the strength to be able to control the mind. And then immediately I was able to give up eating meat. Even though the tongue may have wanted to taste, those.
Then the question comes that millions of people hear all these things, they listen and hearing there. Only few of them, like you, they allowed to change, but the other doesn't. Why?
Yeah, because the intelligence is still not strong enough. But it's just a question of getting the intelligence to be more stronger. So it's not just by necessarily a few minutes of hearing that
You were a complete atheist.
Yeah.
What makes you do like any atheist, like your father, and then you both are atheists, and then
Yeah.
when you listen,
Yeah.
you just convert it or slowly or whatever happened there. How come it doesn't happen to your father, only to you?
Yeah, because there's a prerequisite to that working, and that is that we should be materially frustrated, materially exhausted. If you're still materially hopeful, if your mind is still holding on tightly to the hope that we can be happy in the material world, we can enjoy in the material world, then it's not going to give any opportunity for the intelligence to be awakened, because the mind is very strong at that point. When you have a very enthusiastic, and very hopeful that you can be happy and enjoy in the material world, there's no chance for the intellect to develop, to grow, to break out of the shackles. But when you've gone through some suffering, some difficulties, and then that hope starts to weaken, your faith that you can enjoy and be happy in the material world, when that starts to become slackened, that creates some weakness. That creates some weakness in the mind, and the intelligence can then break free and become stronger. And we see that like now here in New Zealand, as well as many places, then people have suffered so much, especially in these last couple of years. Some of them lost their jobs, can't pay the mortgage, lost their houses, their health is gone
Lost
down,
their loved ones.
lost family members, like, you know, like I'm staying at the moment with 2 people from India, and they say nearly every one of their friends from India here, nearly every one of them has lost at least one family member
That's true.
back in India. You know, they've lost at least one of their family members. So that breaks down.
But the thing is, the people does not turn to Krishna conscious after that even.
No, I'm experiencing that. You know, a lot of people, they've gone through so many tribulations and difficulties, and they're feeling so frustrated in their desire for enjoyment and happiness, and they're looking for alternatives. They're looking for another way forward. You know, that materialism doesn't work. You know, they've tried it, they've suffered so much as a result, and they're looking for some alternative, and their ears are open. See, that's the thing. In order for you to be able to really hear from devotees, you have to be attentive. You have to be receptive. If you're closed off, you know, don't try to tell me anything. I know everything, you know. I'm not interested in spirituality, whatever. So like that, if you're closed off, you're not receptive, you're not going to get the benefit. You're not going to, there's no chance for the intelligence to awaken. But if you're receptive, you know, please help me. You know, I need some help. I need some guidance. If you're willingly wanting that, then, you know, you can hear properly. That is the real thing. You know, there's a quality of hearing. It's not just any kind of hearing. There has to be a good quality of hearing, and that is that we're attentive, we're alert. It's like, just like if someone's talking but you fall asleep, then what are you going to hear? You know, like many times, like in classes, Bhagavatam class or whatever, sometimes people falling asleep. And then obviously in that situation, you're not even conscious. So you're not aware of what's being said. So you're going to miss out. But also if your mind is somewhere else, you know, someone's talking, a devotee's talking, your mind is somewhere else. You're thinking about, oh, I've got to do this today. I've got to go and do that job, make that money, whatever. Then you miss it. You know, you're not really hearing. So attentively hearing is very important. Same with chanting. If you chant inattentively, you know, Hare Kṛṣṇa, the lips are moving and whatever like that, but your mind is somewhere else, so you're not going to get the best benefit. But if you're chanting and you're concentrating your mind, then you're getting so much more benefit. So that's very important. These difficulties that people are going through is bringing them to that point that they're really looking for some alternatives, and they're very eager, very enthusiastic. Like, people are coming up to us and, can I do some service? You know, I want to do some service, and can you please tell me what is Hare Kṛṣṇa all about? Like, it's not like I'm going up to them and pushing it on them, you know, about spirituality, and that they're not interested. No, they're so interested and they're so eager, and they're asking me, you know, please tell me about Hare Kṛṣṇa. You know, it's amazing. I've had like professional cooks, you know, they have their own restaurants and that, and they've lost their jobs, some of them, because they don't want to get vaccinated, so they can't do their work. And so they're so frustrated, and but they're really eager to find out about Krishna consciousness, and they're like helping me to prepare the food, because they have the skills, and so I'm engaging them and assisting me, and just being together with them for 1 week, you know, there's so much advancement, and they're asking so many nice questions, and they're doing service, and they're being engaged like that very nicely. So so much upliftment is there. So this is the best way to progress in Krishna consciousness.
That teaching, mate, that you gave us, where you said who comes to look at the scriptures, it was I haven't got this in order, but it was the wise, the inquisitive,
Yes.
the ones that want money gains,
Yes.
and I've missed one.
The health, the sick people.
Well, distressed. Which is
Distressed.
about. So this is
And
this is the main. Yeah, Bob, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think that sums it up beautifully. You know, I've got some friends around me that really live in ignorance, and it's difficult to get the message across until they're ready.
Until they're ready, yes.
You know,
True.
until they kind of hit rock bottom and realise they're going in the wrong direction. It's
Yeah. No, it's great you brought up that verse, Bob, and you remembered it very well. So that's the 7th chapter, text 16. So we can look at that one.
7:16, is it?
Yeah, 7:16. And that's the main category of the four, is they're in distress, and because of that distress, they're approaching the Lord to help them from the distress. And I've seen that nearly everyone, where I had like thousands of people, nearly everyone is talking about God. It's like God this, God that, the Lord this and that. And that wasn't like that before. Hardly anyone used to talk about God. But now everyone is talking about God, you know, in the group that I'm in. You know, they're in distress, you know, they've lost jobs, like I said, their houses, you know, family members, whatever, they're in distress, and they're all talking about God. And it's so ripe. They're so ripe for Krishna consciousness. They want it like anything. They want the prasadam, they want the holy name, they're chanting. It's just fantastic. You know, so this is the foundation for making the transition from material life to spiritual life. But just by adding this, you know, some distress is there, or they're looking for wealth, inquisitive by that, searching for knowledge, and then that can bring us forward. Yeah. So do you want to read that one, Bob?
Yeah. Sorry, I've got it in front of me. I've just got to work out 7. Oh, sorry, I've just
16.
7. Yeah, hang on. I'll only be one sec. I just had it. Okay. O best among the Bharatas, 4 kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me: the distressed, the desire of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the absolute. Now, can I just add my of what I've seen of it? Many wise men turn to the scriptures.
Yeah.
You know, the happiest man that's alive, he was a very intelligent man before he turned to the scriptures. Do you know who I'm talking about? He's a monk. They often call him the wisest man in the world, the happiest man in the world.
The Dalai Lama.
I think it's the Dalai Lama's one of his assistants, I think.
Okay.
And remember, they ran tests on him, you know, where they put the wires on the top of his head and checked the what was going on in the brain, and he was so relaxed and happy. And anyway.
Okay. Yes.
But you know, my experience is many of them are very bright individuals as well.
Yes. Yeah. So if one is very wise, very intelligent, then, you know, naturally he'll also be searching for God. Yeah. Surrender to God.
Because they're searching. I know intelligence doesn't mean they're wise, but they're smart enough to go searching for the truth, you know.
Yeah. So the question is then for you, if someone's in distress and they don't surrender to God, if they don't take to devotional service, so they don't surrender to God, so what's happened there? What went wrong? Because this is saying if they're in distress, then they are going to turn to God. You know, if they're seeking for wealth, they'll turn to God. So if they're in distress, if that's there, but they don't turn to God, what does that mean?
Well, in my books, they're lost because you know, I don't know, I forget how you put it, but, you know, most people turn to, let's call it, let's say a religion or the scriptures after they've lost a lot in their life, whether it be loved ones or financial losses. That's when they tend to look for God, you know.
Yeah. But
Is that the sort of answer you're thinking of, or?
yeah, no, that's true what you're saying. But before Krishna mentions these 4 categories of people that surrender to God.
The ignorant, do you mean?
Well, no, well, it's saying these 4 categories means you're in distress, you're searching for wealth, inquisitive, searching for knowledge.
Yeah.
Those four kinds of persons, they turn to God in that situation. But there's something mentioned before that. What does it say before that? 4 kinds of what kind of people?
Pious.
Yes. Pious. So what's the opposite to pious? Is impious, or we could say sinful. If a sinful person is in distress, he won't turn to God. If a sinful person is searching for wealth, he won't turn to God. If a sinful person is inquisitive, he won't turn. If a sinful person is wise, but he won't turn to God. But if they're pious, and then what does pious mean? Prabhupada explains once that pious means pious means activities that cleaning our heart. Activities that clean our heart. That's a pious activity. So a pious person means one whose heart's a bit clean. He's been engaging in activities that are cleaning our heart, that are purifying our heart. That's pious activity. So someone that's performed pious activities that clean our heart. So that's a pious person. His heart's a bit cleaner. And a sinful person is engaged in activities that make the heart dirtier. If they're engaged in activities that make the heart dirtier, and their heart is just full of rubbish, you know, and what activities make the heart dirtier? That's the next question.
Crime. Is that what you mean?
Ignorance.
Yeah. So what are those? What are those activities that are based on ignorance? What are the real crimes according to the universal laws, the laws of karma? According to the law of karma, what are the?
What, eating meat and intoxicants?
So someone that's, you know, engaged in heavily in meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, and gambling, those activities make the heart dirtier. So, I mean, I remember, you know, even at a young age, watching my father shoot cows in the head. You know, on our farm we had cows, and he would do like that. So that immediately disqualified, you know, from turning to God. Immediately your heart becomes, you know, hardened by that. The heart becomes hardened by those activities, you know, and immediately, you know, you become less qualified, you know, become disqualified. You know, of course, we were all doing those things, you know, probably before we took to Kṛṣṇa consciousness. So then we think, well, how the hell did I become Kṛṣṇa conscious? Because I was also doing sinful activities. But, you know, there's different degrees. So, I mean, I remember even before I came to Kṛṣṇa consciousness, I was attracted to having friends that were vegetarians. And I didn't know why, but somehow I liked vegetarians, you know, more than non-vegetarians. You know, I didn't really understand why, but I suppose I found them, they were more peaceful. They were generally more peaceful people and you know, kind people and, you know, like that. So somehow or other. So, you know, even before I came to Kṛṣṇa consciousness, I was trying to get away from those kind of activities, sort of, you know, just automatically. And even when I was alone, I stayed away from my mum and dad for some time, and I just had a vegetarian diet. I remember for 3 weeks I was looking after a friend's house when I was 18 or something, and I just ate vegetarian food for those 3 weeks. So like doing that, it's cleaning the heart. Cleaning the heart. So, and that's going to make it easier for us to, you know, that to hear from the devotees and adopt Krishna consciousness. If we're more pious, if our heart's a bit cleaner. If it's very dirty, then it's very hard to adopt Krishna consciousness. You know, and a devotee asked Prabhupada, saying that, because if we look a little bit further on, let's look a bit further on. I think it's 7th chapter, text 28. 28.
7:28, did you say?
Okay, so a little bit further on, 28. Read that one. Yeah.
7. What? Sorry, you're still at 7:28.
Yeah, read that. Read the English for that one.
Okay, hang on, I'm nearly there. Okay. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination.
Yeah, so this is explaining how people can come to Krishna consciousness, come to spiritual life, if they're pious, you know, if they're
previously life was pious as well.
Even in the previous life, yes. So not just in this life, plus also in the previous life, then that's like a foundation for getting into spiritual life. If you haven't been, you know, sinful, you know, engaged in these 4 sinful activities, that's like, you know, gives you a foundation from which you can, you know, become attracted to spirituality. You know, so one devotee said to Prabhupada, you know, in reference to this verse, but he said, but Prabhupada, most of the devotees, they were sinful before they came to Krishna consciousness. So how is it that they went from being sinful to becoming devotees? It doesn't seem to match up with what this verse is saying. And what did Prabhupada say? He said, I created your piety. Now that's far out.
What do you say I created?
I created your piety.
Uh-huh.
That means that, yes, they were sinful, but due to having association with the devotee, with Prabhupada, that they immediately went from being sinful to pious. They immediately got lifted up from that sinful position to a pious position due to Prabhupada's association. And that is the power of the pure devotee, that he can even lift up a sinful person and immediately purify them by his association. We know, of course, that God can do that. Like, you know, God can immediately purify some sinful person, you know, like by killing them, you know, with a Sudarshan disc as chakra. They become cleaned of all sinful reactions immediately and become liberated. And sometimes he might do like Lord Chaitanya would embrace someone, like he embraced one sinful person that was an animal killer and a meat eater, and he immediately got love of Godhead. So we know that God can do that. He can immediately purify even the most sinful person. But also in the same way, a devotee can do that. A pure devotee has the power that he can immediately purify even the most sinful person by his desire. Like my spiritual master told me that, Guru Goswami, that when Prabhupada first met him, well, actually, after he first met him, then Prabhupada sent him a letter saying that when I first met you, I prayed to Kṛṣṇa that may this good soul appreciate the value of Krishna consciousness. And then he said to me, and then he said, I did. And then my spiritual master is telling me that in the same way, when I first met you, meaning me, then he prayed to Kṛṣṇa, may this good soul appreciate the value of Krishna consciousness. And I did. You know, so what I'm saying is that, you know, if a devotee prays to Kṛṣṇa that, you know, Kṛṣṇa, please help this person become Kṛṣṇa conscious, then that can influence Kṛṣṇa. That can influence Kṛṣṇa to clean the heart of that person, to somehow make arrangements to help that person become Kṛṣṇa conscious. Normally, Kṛṣṇa doesn't interfere with some, you know, soul in the material world's, you know, journey going through the material world. But if a devotee who Kṛṣṇa is very partial to the devotee, because the devotee loves Kṛṣṇa, so Kṛṣṇa loves the devotee, and he's always trying to please the devotee. Like the devotee is always trying to please Kṛṣṇa. So Kṛṣṇa also reciprocates, and he's all perfectly, and he's trying to please the devotee. So if the devotee says, Kṛṣṇa, you please help this person, then Kṛṣṇa listens to that. And even though the person was sinful, then Kṛṣṇa may help that person, you know, come to Kṛṣṇa consciousness. And that's how it works. So we shouldn't worry that, well, you know, we're sinful, you know, we can never come to Kṛṣṇa consciousness. No, we can. But we should, you know, take some association from the devotees, and they will help us. They will help us and lift us up. So it's pretty interesting, huh?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
But we see that, you know, if someone is a bit pious, you know, they're not addicted to those four sinful activities, they can easily come to Kṛṣṇa consciousness if they're put in a distressful situation, or, you know, like that, they're searching for wealth, like that, you know, inquisitive. Then very easily, very quickly, they come to Kṛṣṇa consciousness. And even a sinful person, if they somehow can get the association of devotees, you know, then by the devotees' mercy and Krishna's mercy together, when they are in distress, they also can come. But without that devotee's mercy, you know, a sinful person, yeah, not possible really. Not possible that they can take an interest in Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Just sense gratification. And because of that, their Maya has completely covered them over, like you mentioned, ignorance. So because of you know, being so sinful, then Maya just works them over. You know, and we see that too. That there are very determined demons that are just so anti-God, you know, and so materialistic and so sinful. And yeah, there's no opportunity for them to come to Kṛṣṇa consciousness. So it's very polarized. It's very polarized at the moment. There are some people that are so ripe for Kṛṣṇa consciousness right now because there is a lot of distress. But there's also a camp, a group of living entities that are just so demoniac, you know, so evil, and they're so far away from Kṛṣṇa consciousness. They're exploiting
And some people they come to Krishna consciousness with the motive, and when the motive they got it, and then they leave.
Yes, so that's the danger of this, that, you know, you come to God because of some material reason, because you want God to remove your suffering, or you want God to give you some wealth, or you come with a question and your question's answered, and then you go away. So that's the danger of this. Then when the distress goes away, then you leave, you know, or when you get the money, then you leave. So that's the danger of that. But the hope is that, you know, they come for that material motive to get free from distress. But in due course, if somehow they can hear from the devotees, and that will awaken their Kṛṣṇa consciousness, and then even when the distress does go away, that I'm not the body, I'm the soul serving Kṛṣṇa, that my real happiness is Kṛṣṇa, that I'm always going to be put in distress in the material world as long as I have a material body. The real solution to getting free from distress permanently is that I have to go back to the spiritual world and my spiritual body and associate with Kṛṣṇa like that. And then even when the distress goes away, if they become Kṛṣṇa conscious, then they won't go away. But yeah, if they're still ignorant, then yeah, when the distress goes away, they'll go away. But that's the real thing. Then, you know, they've come, you know, to Kṛṣṇa because of some, you know, temporary material motivation, which may not last very long. But in that the time that they're coming, you know, they need to be plugged into Kṛṣṇa consciousness, and as soon as that transcendental knowledge is awakened in their heart, then they won't go away. And as soon as they get fixed up, so that's the thing, you know, we all have to take seriously is that we need to get really fixed up in this knowledge, and that's why we're having this little study group to study the books, because this is what's going to help us to keep Kṛṣṇa consciousness. I mean, in one sense, it's quite easy to come to Kṛṣṇa consciousness, and it's very easy to leave Kṛṣṇa consciousness, but it's hard to stay in Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Because Maya's always trying to drag us down, you know, and there's so many obstacles. And but if we become fixed up in this knowledge, then you'll become like Prabhupada, you know, he's like a mountain of faith. He becomes unshakable. So we really want to understand the philosophy, understand the truth that we are eternal souls, and we want to be convinced about that, have completely strong faith in that understanding that we're all eternal souls, that we're not the body, and that we are part and parcel of Kṛṣṇa, and he loves us, and we love him. Like that, we want to develop that love through devotional service, and that will help us stay strong even in difficult situations like what we face now in the world. So many difficulties. It's always there, but it's becoming very obvious now, you know, that there's so many difficulties. But we can stay strong in Kṛṣṇa consciousness through all these calamities. Like Prabhupada said, I mean, our devotees said to Prabhupada, what will happen, Prabhupada, if there's a third world war? Obviously, that's a major distress, you know. And you think, well, you know, how am I going to be able to continue? And Prabhupada, what did Prabhupada say? You know, if there's a third world war, how are we going to deal with that? What should we do to deal with that kind of scenario? Prabhupada said, we will chant Hare Kṛṣṇa. You know, it seems like, really? We're just going to keep chanting Hare Kṛṣṇa? That's what we're going to do? Yeah, that's what we're going to do. You know, well, that's what a devotee that's fixed up in the knowledge is going to do. You know, but if we're a bit weak, you know, we might give it up. We might give it up. We might try to take shelter of something else.
It's, according to the Prabhupada, he said in 1973, is a 50 years time, it's got to be World War III, and which is, we are in the time there from 73 to 2023 will be 50 years.
Yeah, I mean,
And,
it's
soon it's going to happen, whether Russia, Ukraine, or something, and it's going to be ended with the Third World War.
Many astrologers are agreeing that it's looking like, astrologically, according to the way the planets are lining up, that in 2024, that there will be some kind of big-scale war in 2024, which is only 51 years from when Prabhupada said 50 years.
Yeah.
So it's not looking good in terms of that. But like I said, you know, that people being put into distress is a very good platform for people to take the spiritual life. So that's I mean, it's materially it's like a disaster, but spiritually it can be very good that people are put into distress can help them to take to spiritual life. It's a shame that we have to come to that point that we're, you know, being, you know, pushed down to the ground, you know, on our knees, and we're completely suffering, you know, before we can start to make our way up, you know, to Kṛṣṇa consciousness. But that's just unfortunately the way it is. You know, we're enjoying, when we're happy, we forget God, you know, and when we're suffering, we remember God. Like there's a saying, there's no atheists in a foxhole. Because the foxhole is what the soldiers dig in the wartime, right, to stop them getting shot. You know, they dig a hole in the ground. So There's a saying, there's no atheists in a foxhole, because when the bullets are flying around your head, everyone prays. Everyone prays.
Tell me this, did Prabhupada ever talk about people after the Second World War, and did many of them turn to spirituality? And the reason I ask is, in Cambodia after the Civil War, many hid in the monasteries, but they also turned to the spiritual side. A lot of them just hid from society by going into the, you could call it hiding. A lot of criminals hid into the monasteries, but a lot of them turned to the spiritual side as well. Did he ever talk about that after the Second World War?
I can't remember hearing Prabhupada talk about that specifically, but it's just logical that would have happened.
I think it is.
So you reckon if the Third World War happened, a lot of people will be more spiritual?
I think so. That's me. That's my opinion, my word.
Yeah, it's not automatic. It's not automatic. But see, they're ripe for it at that point. They're ripe. But then you've got to inject Krishna consciousness in them. If you don't, then when that distress fades, and they get back to being happy again, then they're going to forget God. But it's in that short period where they're really acutely feeling distressed, that's when they need to connect up with a devotee, and you need to inject the spiritual knowledge into them. I mean, there's a saying called Smarshan Vairagya. Smarshan Vairagya. Smarshan means funeral, and Vairagya means detachment. So when you go to a funeral and you see the dead body in front of you, then generally everyone becomes detached, realizing that, well, this is the ultimate end of life. You're just going to,
when they come back home, back to the same.
Yeah, but the problem is, after the funeral, they all get together and have a few drinks, and then start enjoying again. And then they forget that 1 hour ago they had vowed that, well, I have to get serious about my life. I'm going to end up dead, so I need to get serious and think about, what's the real purpose of life. But they forget that, because as soon as they get into enjoyment mode again, then that's all lost. So that's the problem with that smarshan vairagya, that kind of temporary detachment brought about due to distress or whatever. It just doesn't last, So, but what you want to do, as soon as the person's coming out of the funeral, before he can get to the liquor, you got to, give him the Bhagavad Gita and get him to chant Hare Krishna and give him prasadam. You know what I'm saying? That is, when they're in distress, you need to immediately plug them into spirituality.
Strike the wine when the iron is hot.
The iron's hot, because if you wait too long, they're going to get back into enjoyment mode again, because that's the nature of the material world, dualities, right? There's distress, but there's also happiness. So they're constantly, oscillating between the two. But when they're still in the distress, that's when you want to try to catch them, and give them the book and everything like that. And I know so many cases like that, that they took the book when they were in distress. They chanted Hare Krishna when they were in distress. They took the prasadam. Like one guy here, he was a security guard. In this protest, they've arranged, their own volunteer security guards and that. So this security guard, he had his possessions kept in the security tent. They moved the security tent, and his possessions got left outside the tent for a little bit, and someone stole them, including his wallet and his shoes and everything. He only had his clothes he was wearing. He didn't have.
My God.
And one of the other, admin people brought him to the Hare Krishna tent with the hope that he could get something to eat. and he was very distressed, and they just thought, well, at least he'll get some food in his stomach will help him to quieten down and relax. And I'd run out of everything. It was after we'd served dinner, except for a bit of rice. So I said, all I have is rice. He's welcome to have the rice. And he said, I'm happy just even to have some rice. I felt so bad. And then I remembered people had donated lots of avocados. So I said, how about I cut up some avocados and you can have avocados with the rice? And he was so happy. He was so grateful just to get such a simple thing, you know, just some plain rice with avocado. And then they'd mentioned that everything had been taken, including his wallet. And I thought, well, the guy doesn't even have any money. You know, what is he going to do? How is he even going to get home? So I felt bad, you know, and compassion sort of awakened in my heart towards this guy. And I opened up my wallet, and I gave him $50. And I just handed him the $50, and he was like unsure, you know, to take it. Like, really? You know, you're going to give me $50? Like, anything? You're just going to. And then I said, take it, you know, please. This is a gift from me. You just take it. And then he accepted the money, and he looked at me in the eyes. You know, it was so much, you know, like relief and like gratitude in his eyes. And he looked at me in the eyes and he said, Hare Kṛṣṇa.
No.
And like bliss in my heart. Sincerely said, Hare Kṛṣṇa. That was worth more than $1 million to me. You know, I gave $50 and I got $1 million back, you know, and the happiness I felt when he said Hare Kṛṣṇa. And because I was realizing at that point, this man is liberated from material life now. He's chanted the holy, probably the first time in his life, first time since he's been in the material world, millions of births, and he's chanted the holy name, and now he's going back to Godhead. Krishna's going to pull this soul out of the material world because he's chanted the holy name. And that's what the scriptures say, and we have faith in that statement, that even if someone chants the holy name once, they're going to be released from the material world. They're going to be liberated. I felt so happy.
Great story.
It wasn't even the story. That's just the start of it. Then 3 people had come together. He was one. The admin lady brought him. So then the admin lady watched what I did, and that made her so happy that I'd helped this guy out so much. And then she said to me, looked at me and said, Hare Kṛṣṇa. And then I felt more ecstasy that she's liberated. And then those 2 left, and then another guy had been with them, you know, seeing this guy was having a hard time, you know, he was also accompanying. And he was just one of the people there, one of the protesters. And he said, look, mate, I have a different philosophy than you, because he knew I'm a Hare Kṛṣṇa and he followed something else. He didn't tell me what the different philosophy was. But he said, I have a different philosophy to you. Now, I'm not going to become a Hare Kṛṣṇa. But he said, I've been watching you, and I see you have some special power.
Sorry, I couldn't hear it, mate. Sorry.
He said, I've been observing you, and I see you some special power. He said, I see you have some special power.
Oh.
And then he looked me in the eyes and he said, Hare Kṛṣṇa.
Wonderful.
And I was just completely just drunk with happiness, you know. I was just feeling so much happiness, realizing that all these people are going to become liberated and they're going to become happy, and realizing that they're going to become, I felt so happy. And also that Kṛṣṇa will be happy to get his children back home, back to Godhead. You know, that Kṛṣṇa is so happy. And, you know, and I'm feeling that Kṛṣṇa is definitely happy by these activities. because otherwise how can I be happy? Because our happiness is not coming from ourselves. Our happiness comes from God. We're only able to be happy due to the mercy of the Lord. When the Lord's happy with us, then automatically we're happy. See, happiness is not something that we generate ourselves separately. Happiness is something that's a gift given by God when He's pleased with us. So that's something that we realize as we progress in Kṛṣṇa consciousness, that we need God. We can't get food without God. Our body doesn't work without God. Our mind, our intelligence, we're completely helpless. We're depending on Him for everything. So, yeah, so many valuable lessons we get through life, and we should, think about them, very deeply. And yeah, I'm getting so many realizations through distributing prasadam in this particular time. People are in so much distress. Like that guy, like I said, he's in distress, and he's, because of that, he got to come and get the prasadam, and because of that, he came to hear the holy name, and he's got the mercy. He's become very fortunate. I mean, he was very unfortunate. His stuff was stolen and everything like that. But now he's become very fortunate. He lost his shoes, he lost his wallet, but he got a ticket back to Godhead.
That's right. Could have been an event that is going to change his life.
Yeah, and then I saw him today. And you know what? He told me that I just passed by him, and there's hundreds of people walking all over, and I remembered him, and he remembered me. And he said, so much. It's like, everything you did for me yesterday helped me so much. And he said, I've been telling other people to chant Hare Kṛṣṇa. You believe it?
Really?
Believe it? He said, I just met him yesterday, and he said to, Hare Kṛṣṇa to me. I gave him the prasadam, and he said Hare Kṛṣṇa. Now he's telling other people to chant Hare Kṛṣṇa. Hare Kṛṣṇa, and telling other people. And it's like that, and that way it spreads like wildfire. That way it just goes everywhere. So even I'm not meeting the next person, but he is. I tell him, and then he tells someone else, and then he tells, and that way it goes and goes. Just like COVID, right? The virus spreads from one person to the next. But Kṛṣṇa consciousness can also become infectious like that. It can spread. But it has to start from, like it just COVID starts from one infected person. It just needs one infected person. So you need just even one person that has love for Kṛṣṇa.
Well, they always say things like a Chinese whisper. Why couldn't we have a Kṛṣṇa whisper?
Yeah, Kṛṣṇa whisper, yeah. It's going like that. I mean, I'm experiencing that here. It's just the holy name is on everyone's lips. Everyone's talking about. And I overhear people talking, like, I'm in a tent and I hear people talking outside, and people say, oh, this Hare Kṛṣṇa food is just so good. This Hare Kṛṣṇa food. And they're constantly saying, Hare Kṛṣṇa, and this Hare Kṛṣṇa food, this Hare Kṛṣṇa chanting, they're constantly saying Hare Kṛṣṇa. And, the Hare Krishnas, they're nice people, these people's conversations. And I even hear people saying it on the stage. They have a stage with the loudspeakers, and the person is saying, oh, you should go and try the Hare Kṛṣṇa food and, the Hare Kṛṣṇa chanting. And it's like that.
Thank you very much. I need to go to Bhakti tree a bit early today.
Yep, time's up.
Thank you very much.
Abhay, thanks for being there.
Take care.
Kṛṣṇa,
Hare Kṛṣṇa.